The governor gets gutsy, taking his budget on the road, on the radio, on TV, and taking on New Jersey. Meanwhile, Connecticut union members are cheeseheads in spirit. What we can learn about Wisconsin, about labor and government, and how negotiations might go here. You're watching The Real Story. I'm Lori Perez. Governor Malloy is launching an all-out campaign to sell his budget proposal and will certainly face all sorts of criticism and pushback from lawmakers, residents, and workers here in Connecticut. But outside the state, too, it seems Governor Malloy and New Jersey Governor Chris Christie are going to scuffle about it also. Both appeared on MSNBC's Morning Joe last week and held nothing back as they criticized the other's answer to state budget woes.
Mixing it up in the morning, Governors Chris Christie and Dannel Malloy started the day swinging. First out of the corner, the Garden State Republican attacking Malloy for his proposed tax hikes, and also perhaps for Malloy calling Christie bombastic in a recent New York Times article.
Yeah, well, let me tell you something. And guess what? And I'll be waiting at the border to take Connecticut's jobs when he does it. You know, he's still got to read the governor's.
He's coming in.
He's got to read the governor's owner's manual first before he starts.
Can we hold it 1 second?
It was a swipe that Malloy responded to on the show.
Chris Christie has to do what he thinks is best for his state, and I have to do what I think is best for my state.
And later at the Capitol.
New Jersey's sales tax as of today is 7%. New Jersey's income tax today has a maximum rate of 8.97%. New Jersey's corporate tax ranges up to 9%. So if he's waiting for Connecticut jobs to move to New Jersey, he should not hold his breath.
But what's with the verbal venom beyond defending the numbers? Democratic political strategist Matt Hennessy says it's political posturing on Christie's part as he moves to build his role in the national GOP before the 2012 presidential run.
This gives him an opportunity to take a swipe at a Democratic governor without taking a swipe at Andrew Cuomo, who he has to do a lot of business with.
But former Republican lawmaker, now current columnist Kevin Rennie says it's Governor Malloy's ambitions on display, and Connecticut should get used to it.
I don't know what engaging in this kind of disagreement with the governor of New Jersey does for the people of Connecticut, but it probably makes Dan Malloy feel like he's somehow elevating himself beyond simply being governor of Connecticut, which does seem to be something that's on his mind.
Here to talk about the interstate swipes and Governor Malloy's budget battle in general, current Capitol Bureau Chief Chris Keating, Associated Press reporter Sue Haig, and Capitol Bureau Chief for the Connecticut Mirror, Mark Pazniokas. Thank you, all of you, for being here. I guess if I could just get your reaction to what you made of that little, scuffle between the governors.
Well, it seemed to be a bit of a dust-up between two high-profile people, or one high-profile person and another whose profile is going up. I think it does go back. It goes all the way back, really, to last fall when Chris Christie came to Old Greenwich to raise money for Tom Foley. So the two of them have not really been on the same side, and there were some comments in the New York Times, and I'm sure Christie didn't like that. So you add it all up, and there's a bit of a dust-up.
I mean, is there any point to it, or...?
It's entertaining. Governor Malloy is somebody who, when pushed, his natural inclination is to push back. And that's what we saw. I talked to him at the end of the week, and he insists he's really not interested in continuing this. But and he was very well behaved on Morning Joe. You saw he really kind of let it go. But then at the press conference at the Capitol later, he came armed with those tax numbers, and he tweaked them back a little bit.
And what about his appearance? Are we going to be seeing him on these national shows? I mean, I guess that's kind of his orientation, right? Is because he's from Fairfield County, so he knows those shows are right there in New York. He can swing down and get an appearance, or...
Well, he's selling this thing in 17 town halls across the state. So I don't know that he's really looking nationally right now as much. I think when invited, he will go. He did Neil Cavuto on Fox, and he accepted Morning Joe. Clearly, look, all these guys enjoy it, and Malloy has sort of carved out his own little niche. He's the guy who's trying to be nice to labor, even as he's asking for $1 billion in concessions, where some of the other governors are just beating him up right now.
Right. And you brought up his listening tour, or 17 or 18 17 stops, right?
17.
Is that too many? do you think, Sue?
I think he's trying to get as much saturation out there as possible. And you know that if you go to one town and you forget another, there's going to be people complaining about it. So he's trying to be as thorough as possible. I mean, he brought this up during the campaign where he wanted, I forgot how many debates.
17.
17. It's the magical number for him.
Same places. He's picking places that still have a daily newspaper or a newspaper, and that was sort of the criteria he used to go ahead.
So is it all about him selling his, or is he going to, take the responses and the questions and go back and make changes, you think?
Well, I think any of the changes will be made by the legislature. Obviously there will be changes in the budget. Malloy the other day said something along the lines of, if you change it too much, you own it. In other words, pushing it off on the legislature there. But through the history of governors, the last 4 governors at least, there's been a fair number of changes. However, the guts of it, normally the guts of what the governor proposes, a lot of that does stick.
What do you think about the public's response thus far to the governor's proposed budget?
I've been out there talking to people, and it's sort of a mixed bag. I mean, you get people that are upset with the tax increases, but I was surprised that there are a fair amount of people out there that feel that the state is in a mess and we have to do something, and they are willing to share the pain. It seems like there are some people that are buying into this idea of shared sacrifice and spreading it across the board.
Right.
There was a poll out by the Yankee Institute, conservative think tank. 70% of the people said they accept the idea it's going to be a mix of taxes and spending cuts. The problem was when you asked about specific tax increases, none of them were terribly popular.
Right. I know that Chris Healy was trying to really sell the special elections this past week as a referendum on the governor and his budget. And then when it didn't go his way, he said, well, it was kind of too soon. There wasn't enough time for people to ingest it. I mean, I don't know. Do you think, what do you make of that whole?
I think each side had their own spin on it. I mean, the Republican spin was that these were 9 Democratic seats and that there was basically no way in the world that the Republicans would have won any of them in November, which they didn't. They lost them all in November. On the flip side, could they have won more than 2? I guess they could have. Stewart lost in New Britain. A lot of people thought that he would win.
Yeah, I was surprised by
but he
that.
did not. And I think some people were not so sure. They thought the Democrats could hold on in Meriden, where they lost. Lost Gaffey's seat, basically. So it was kind of a mixed bag, is the bottom line.
I don't know. Does it make a difference? I mean.
Well, and it's 22-14 in the Senate now. If it had been 20-16, would have been a much, much bigger difference. 22-14, there's breathing room there. You only need 18 plus Wyman to pass the budget.
Right.
So a series of conservative Democrats like Bob Duff and Joan Hartley do not have to vote for the budget and can still pass.
Right.
It made a difference on the death penalty. If Garantano lost in New Britain, by my count, the effort to repeal the death penalty was done for this year in the Senate. They would have been a vote short even with Wyman breaking a tie vote, which is the way it was after the November election. It basically was 18-18. So it makes a difference on some things. But on the budget, I think Chris is right. It's the basic dynamic is the same. The Democrats who are more conservative and moderate, they still have the same strength basically they had before.
Right. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but coming up, we're going to continue our discussion of the governor's budget talks, and we're going to talk about where he's really going to face a fight.